Good morning. Page 133. That makes 12 things to be done, and the escape itself will be number 13. All this must be done during the night session. It won't be so good if the little book is not a driver's license. That will mean that he comes and goes by a special bus for interrogators. There must be a special transport in the middle of the night, and the others will think it strange that Levshin couldn't wait till 4 or 5 o'clock, but went off on foot in the middle of the night. Something else to remember: when I go through the door with the square window, I must raise my handkerchief to my face, as though blowing my nose, and simultaneously turn my head to look at my watch. And to set the sentry's mind at rest, I'll call upstairs. Parag, that's his friend. I'm off to the ministry. We'll have a talk tomorrow. Of course, the odds were against him. For the moment, he gave himself a 3 to 5% chance of success. The outer guard room was completely unknown, and he had no real hope of getting past it. But he couldn't die there like a slave. Couldn't feebly submit to kicks. At least he would have the razor blade in the heel of his shoe. So Tenno turned up, freshly shaven, for one nocturnal interrogation, with the iron bar behind his back. The interrogator questioned, abused, threatened. All the time Tenno looked at him in surprise. Couldn't he sense that his hours were numbered? It was 11 o'clock. Tenno's plan was to sit tight till 2 in the morning. Interrogators sometimes wangled themselves. A short night, and began leaving about that time. Now he must seize the right moment, either wait for the interrogator to bring some pages over for signature, as he always did, suddenly pretend to feel faint, let the pages slide to the floor, cause him to bend his head for a minute and, or else, without waiting for the paper, stand up swaying, plead illness, ask for water. When he brought the enamel mug, the glass was reserved for him for his own use. Tenno would drain it, drop it, simultaneously raising his right hand to the back of his neck. It should seem quite natural, since he was supposed to be dizzy. The interrogator would be bound to look down at the mug on the ground, and Tenno's heart thumped. A day of rejoicing was at hand, or perhaps his last day. Things turned out quite differently. Around midnight, another interrogator hurried into the room and began whispering to Levshin's ear. This had never happened before. Levshin made hurried preparations to leave, pressed the button for the warder to come and remove the prisoner. That was that. Tenno went back to his cell and replaced the iron bar. Another time the interrogator sent for him, and he was unshaven, and there was no point in taking the bar with him. Then came a daytime interrogation, and it took a strange turn. The interrogator refrained from yelling and weakened his resolve by predicting that he would get 5 to 7 years, so there was no need to be downhearted. Somehow Tenno no longer felt angry enough to split his head open. Tenno's wrath was not the sort that lasted. The mood of high excitement had passed. It seemed to him now that the odds were too great, that it was too much of a gamble. The escaper's moods are perhaps even more capricious than those of the artist. All his lengthy preparations had gone for nothing, but the escaper must be ready for this too. He had brandished his bar in the air 100 times, killed 100 interrogators a dozen times. He had lived through every minute of his escape in detail, in the office, past the square window, along the guard room, along to the guardroom, beyond the guardroom. He had worn himself out with an escape which he would, after all, not be making. Soon afterward, they changed his interrogator and transferred him to the Lubyanka. There Tenno did not actively prepare to escape. His heart was not in it now that his interrogation seemed to have taken a more hopeful turn. But he was tirelessly observant, and he devised a training routine. Escape from the Lubyanka, is that even possible? If you think about it, it is perhaps easier than escaping from the Fortava. You soon begin to know your way around those long, long corridors through which you are taken to interrogation. In the corridor, you sometimes come across arrows on the wall to the main entrance, number 2, to the main entrance, number 3. You are sorry that you were so thoughtless when you were free, and that you didn't walk around the outside of the Lubyanka to see where each of the entrances was. It's easier here precisely because this is not just the territory of a prison, but a ministry, where there are large numbers of interrogators and other officials whom the guards cannot know by sight. So that entry and exit is bypassed, and the interrogator has his pass in his pocket. Again, if an interrogator is not known by sight, it is not so important to look exactly like him. A rough resemblance is good enough. The new interrogator wears khaki, not naval dress, so that it will be necessary to change into his uniform. No iron bar this time, but if the will is there, you can manage. There are all sorts of suitable objects in his office, a marble paperweight, for instance. Anyhow, you needn't necessarily kill him, just stun him for 10 minutes and you're away. But vague hopes of clemency and reasonableness clouded Tenno's resolution. Only in the Butyrki prison was he relieved of this burden, his sentence read out from a piece of paper with a special board stamp with confinement in camps for 25 years. He signed his name and felt relieved. He found himself smiling, felt his legs carrying him easily to the cell for 25-year prisoners. That sentence released him from humiliation, from the temptation to compromise, from the humble submission, from truckling, from promises of 5 to 7 years bestowed like alms on a beggar. 25, I said, you bastards. Right, if that's all we can expect from you, we escape. Or we die. Or die. But death was surely no worse than a quarter. And a quarter of a century of slavery. Even the shaving of his head after his trial, just an ordinary convict crop, never upset anybody. Outraged, Tenno, just as though they had spat in his face. Now he must seek allies and study the history of other escapes. Tenno was a novice. Sorry. Tenno was a novice in this world. Someone must have tried to escape before him. How often We had all followed the warder through those iron bulkheads which divide the corridors of the butyrky into sections. Yet how many of us have noticed what Tenno saw at once? Each door had 2 locks, but swung open whether the warder undid only one of them. When the warder undid only one of them, this meant that the second lock was for the moment not in use. It consisted of 3 prongs which could emerge from the wall and slide into the iron door. Other people in the cell might talk about what they liked, but Tenno wanted stories about escape attempts and those who took part in them. There was even one prisoner, Manuel Garcia, who had been in a riot and had seen the 3 prongs used. That happened a few months earlier. The prisoners in one of the cells had been let out to relieve themselves, had seized the warder, although it was against the rules that he was alone. There had been no trouble for years, and they were used to submissiveness. Stripped him, tied him up, and left him in the latrine, while one of the prisoners put on his uniform. The lads took the keys and ran around opening all the doors on the corridor. They couldn't have chosen a better place. Some of the prisoners on that corridor were under sentence of death. They started shouting, whooping with joy, calling to each other to go and liberate other corridors and take over the whole prison. They were oblivious of the need for caution. They should have stayed in their cells quietly preparing for flight, allowing only the prisoner disguised as a warder to walk the corridor, but instead they poured out in a noisy crowd. Hearing all the noise, the warder from the next corridor looked through his 2-way spy hole in the iron door and pressed an alarm button. When the alarm is given, the second lock in each of the corridor doors is turned from a central control point, and there is no key to it on the warder's key rings. The mutinous corridor was cut off. A large body of prison guards was called out. They stood in facing ranks, let the mutineers through one by one, beat them up, identified the ringleaders, and led them away. These men already had a quarter each. Was the sentence doubled, or were they shot in transit to the camp? The watchman's cabin, so well known to prisoners at the Kazan station, at a certain distance, of course, from busy public places. Here prisoners are brought in plain vans, and the prison cars are loaded before they are coupled to the train. Tense escort troops line the track on both sides. Dogs strain to be at someone's throat. The order is given. Escort is ready, and there's a deadly rattle of breech block. These people really mean it. The dogs go with them when they lead the prisoners along the track. Make a break for it. If you do, a dog will catch you. But for the committed escaper, who is continually shunted from camp to camp, from jail to jail because of his attempts to escape, the future holds many such stations, many marches under escort along the tracks. And sometimes you will be marched along without dogs, pretend to be lame and sick, scarcely able to drag your duffel bag and jacket behind you, and the escort will be more at ease. If there are several trains standing on the tracks, you might be able to get lost among them. That's it. Drop your things, bend down, and hurl yourself under a railroad car. But as soon as you bend over, you will see the boots of an extra guard striding along on the other side of the train. Every contingency has been foreseen. All you can do is pretend that weakness has caused you to fall and drop your things, unless you are lucky enough to find a through train passing swiftly alongside. Run across the tracks right in front of the engine. No guard will run after you. You can risk your life for freedom, but why should he risk his? By the time the train flashes by, you have gone. But for this, you need 2 strokes of luck. The train must come just at the right time, and you must get past its wheels in one piece. From the Kubyshev transit prison, they were taking prisoners to the station in open trucks, making up a long train of red prison cars. In the transit prison, Tenno had obtained from a local sneak thief who respected escapers 2 local addresses to which you might go for initial support. He shared these addresses with 2 other would-be runaways, and they concerted a plan. All 3 would try to sit in the back row, and when the truck slowed down at a turning, Tenno had made the inward journey in a dark van, and although his eyes would not recognize the turning, his eyes had taken note of it. Then they would jump, all 3 of them at once, right, left, and rear, past the guards, knocking them over if necessary. The guards would open fire, but they would not hit all 3. They might not shoot at all. There would be people in the street. Would they give chase? No, they couldn't abandon the other prisoners in the truck, so they would just shout and fire into the air. If the runaways were stopped, it would be by ordinary people, or Soviet people, passers-by. To frighten them off, the runaways must pretend to be holding knives. They had no knives. The 3 of them maneuvered at the search point and hung back so they would get onto the last truck and not leave before dusk. The last truck arrived, but it is not a shallow 3-tonner like its predecessors, but a Studebaker with high sides. When he sat down, even Tenno found that the top of his head was below the rim. Studebaker moved quickly. Here was a turn. Tenno looked round at his comrades in arms. There was terror on their faces. No, they wouldn't jump. No, they were not committed escapers. But can you be sure of yourself, he wondered. In the dark, with lanterns to light their way, a confused accompaniment of barking, yelling, cursing, clanking. They were installed in cattle cars. Here Tenno let himself down. He was too slow to inspect the outside of the car, and your committed escaper must see everything while the seeing is good. He is not allowed to miss anything at all. At stops, the guards anxiously sounded the cars with mallets. They sounded every single plank. They were afraid of something, then. But of what? Afraid that a plank might be sawn through, so that was the thing to do. A small piece of broken off a hacksaw and sharpened was produced by the thieves. A small piece of broken off a hacksaw. They decided to cut through a solid plank under the bottom bed shelf. When the train slowed down, to lower themselves through the gap, drop onto the line, and lie still until the cars had passed over them. True, the experts said that at the end of the cattle train carrying prisoners, there was usually a drag, a metal scraper. Teeth which passed close to the ties caught the body of anyone trying to escape and dragged him over the ties to his death. All night long they took turns slipping under the bed shelf and sawing away at the plank in the wall, gripping the blade, which was only a few centimeters long, with a piece of rag. It was hard going. Nonetheless, the first breach was made. The plank began to give a little. Loosening it, they saw what was now the morning light, white, on plank boards outside their car. Why white? The reason was that an additional footboard for guards had been built onto their car. Right there, by the breach they had made, stood a sentry. It was impossible to go sawing till the board came moving. Prison escapes, like all forms of human activity, have their own history and their own theory. It's all well to know about them before you try your own hand. The history is that of previous escapes. The security branch publishes no popular pamphlets on escape technology. It stores experience only for its own use. You can learn the history from others who once escaped and were recaptured. Their experience has been dearly bought, with blood, with suffering, almost at the cost of their lives. But to inquire in detail, step by step, about the attempts of one escaper, then a third, then a fifth, is no laughing matter. It can be very dangerous. It is not much less dangerous than asking whether anyone knows whom you should see about joining an underground organization. Stoolies may listen in to your long conversations, and worst of all, the narrators themselves, under torture after an attempted flight, forced to choose between life and death, may have lost their nerve and gone over to the other side, so that they are now live bait rather than fellow spirits. One of the Godfather's main tasks is to determine in good time who sympathizes with escape attempts or takes interest in them. To forestall the lurking would-be escaper, make an entry in his dossier. From then on, he'll be in a disciplinary squad, and escape will be much more difficult. Still, as he moves from prison to prison, camp to camp, Tenno eagerly interrogated escapers. He carried out escapes himself. He was caught. He had other escapers for cellmates in the camp jails, and that was his chance to question them. Sometimes he made mistakes. The heroic escaper, Stepan Blank, sold him to the Kangar security officer Belyan, who repeated to Tenno all the questions he had asked. As for the theory of escape, it is very simple. You do it any way you can. If you get away, that shows you know your theory. If you're caught, you haven't mastered it yet. The elementary principles are as follows. You can escape from a work site, or you can escape from the living area. It is easier from work sites. There are many of them. The security measures are less rigid, and the escaper has tools to hand. You can run away alone. It is more difficult, but no one will betray you. Or you can run away in a group, which is easier, but then everything depends on whether or not you are a well-matched team. Theory further prescribes that you should know the geography as well, as if you had an illuminated map in front of you. But you will never catch sight of a map in the camp. The thieves, incidentally, are completely ignorant of geography. They take us north this transit prison where they felt the cold last time through. A further precept, you must know the people through whose region your escaper lies. Then there is the following general advice as to method. You must constantly prepare to escape according to plan, but be ready at any minute to do it quite differently, to seize a chance. Here is an example of opportunism. At Kangar once, all the prisoners in the disciplinary barracks were marched out to make mud bricks. Suddenly, they were hit by one of those dust storms which are so frequent in Kazakhstan. It grows darker and darker. The sun is hitting. Handfuls of dust and small stones slash your face so painfully that you cannot keep your eyes open. Nobody was ready to run at such short notice, but Nikolai Chekhov rushed to the boundary fence, flung his jerkin onto the barbed wire, scrambled across, scratching himself all over, and hid just outside the camp area. The storm passed. The jerkin on the wire told them that he had escaped. They sent a mounted search party. The riders had dogs on leashes, but the cold storm had swept scent and tracks away, clean away. Chekhov sat out the search in a pile of rubbish. The next day, however, he had to move on, and the motor vehicles sent to scour the steppe picked him up. Teno's first camp was Novorudnoye, near Deshkadgan. Now you're in the very place where they have doomed you to die. This is the place of all places from which you must escape. All around there is desert, salt flats and dunes, on firmer ground held together by tufted grass or prickly camel weed. In some parts of the plain, Kazakhs roam with their herds. In others, there is not a soul. There are no rivers, and you are very unlikely to come upon a well. The best time for flight is in April or May, while melting snow still lingers here and there in puddles, but the camp guards are very well aware of this. At this time of year, the search of prisoners going out to work becomes stricter, and they are not allowed to take with them a single bite or a single rag more than is necessary. That autumn in 1949, 3 runaways, Slobodnya Yanyuk, Bazachenko, and Kozh, risked a dash to the south. Their idea was to walk along the river Sarisu to Kizil Orda, but the river had dried up completely. When they were caught, they were nearly dead of thirst. Taught by this experience, Teno decided that he would not make his escape in the autumn. He went along to culture and education section regularly to show that he was no runaway, no rebel, but one of those rational prisoners who hopes to mend their way by their time. Their 25-year sentence is up. He helped in every way he could, promised to perform his acrobatic stunts, and his memory man turned at camp concerts. And in the meantime went through every bit of paper in the culture and education section until he found a rather poor map of Kazakhstan, which the godfather had carelessly left around. Right, there was an old caravan route to Deshuz Valley, 350 kilometers away, and there would quite probably be a well along the way. Then he could go northward 400 kilometers toward Ishan. Here there would perhaps be water meadows, whereas in the direction of Lake Balkhash lay the Petpak Tala, 500 kilometers of unrelieved desert, but pursuit was unlikely in that direction. Those were the distances. That was the choice. Sounds good. I'll have to finish the rest tomorrow. Thank you for listening. Have a good day.